Buongiorno.
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 Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Venice, Japan Food Plus Symposium. I am now pleased to announce the opening remarks by the Vice-Rector, Fabrizio Marrella.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to this symposium. It is a great honor and a deep pleasure for me to address a few words at the start of your conference. Our symposium will explore cross-cultural perspectives in food between Japan and Italy, and it will be a unique chance to explore the particular context of cultural and economic relations between our two countries. Food is recognized as a basic need, and it is also a human right. It protects the right of all human beings to live in dignity, free from hunger and food insecurity. It is nonetheless hard to define it in countries like ours, where 3,000 years have left hundreds of practices and cuisines. Hence, there is a room for different narratives to help us navigate the complex world of food. But why food matters so much to Italians and Japanese? Food is a culture, and if I had to find a better definition, valid both for Japan and Italy, you will certainly agree with me that food is a form of art. There is no improvisation in food. Thus, I wish that in these Venetian days, a better definition, valid both for Japan and Italy, you will certainly agree that there's a certain philosophy that can be developed around food. And let me just offer a few thoughts. And of course, I will keep it short, Georgia. But food is certainly part of a philosophy of thinking about life, because there is a metaphysics of food, what food is and what is not. There's an epistemology of food, how we, Italian and Japanese, experience food. There is an aesthetics of food, what taste or look food has or should have. And there is also a social ethics of food, how we should make and eat food together, the rules of behavior and respect. Globalization of food as a culture of wellness has permitted an extraordinary development of food business, a business which generates a significant income and today is even part of the discussion about sustainability. One may add to this list that there is an equally important trade policy of food, which is how governments are regulating or should regulate food. And that is something that in the current situation of pandemic will certainly be addressed by one or more speakers. Now, having been myself a visiting professor of law at Ito-Tsubashi University, I certainly subscribe and will follow with a lot of interest your discussions. And if that is the fil rouge of this symposium, it will be fascinating to listen to the speakers in these 3 days, because we will speak about the Italian food culture perception, the operation of food trading companies in Japan, branding differences between Italy and Japan, sustainable finance strategies to promote the agri-food industry. And of course, last but not least, food culture is represented in cinema, traditional performing arts, design, and anthropology in both the Italian and Japanese contexts. Now, before I turn the floor to the next speaker, may I thank wholeheartedly all those from Japan and from Foscari who have worked so hard to offer us such a great symposium. The list will be long, but may I just especially thank Mr. Yuji Amamiya, Consul General of Japan in Milan, with Ms. Yuko Yoshimura, Deputy Consul General of Japan in Milan, as well as my colleagues, Professors Roberto Novielli, Marcella Mariotti, and Bonaventura Ruperti, with all the speakers. So thank you very much for joining us in this symposium. And now it is my honor and a pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Yuji Amamiya, Consul General of Japan in Milan. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Fabrizio Marrella, Vice-Rector for International Relations and Cooperation of the Foscari University, who is hosting us today. Professor Roberto Novielli, all the teachers of Japanese language and culture department, all the staff who have been involved in the preparations and the organization of this event, and last but not least, all the Italian and Japanese speakers who have prepared themselves to participate in this event. I am truly grateful to the Foscari University for playing an active role in promoting better understanding of Japan through realization of lots of international events, such as today's one, as well as for their continuous commitment in leading advanced education of Japanese language and developing Japanese studies in many fields. The collaboration between the Foscari University and the Japanese institutions, such as our consulate or embassy in Rome and the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Italy, has had a notable and significant development in recent years. I myself had the pleasure of participating in 2 conferences organized by this prestigious university. In particular, I remember very well when I had the pleasure of attending the International Conference on Education of the Japanese Language in August 2018. I was impressed deeply to witness an intense discussion about the future of the education of Japanese language among almost 700 participants coming from all over the world. And just 1 year later, I visited Venice again for accompanying the former Foreign Minister Kono, who handed over personally the Foreign Minister's commendations for the year 2019 to the Professor Novielli and Professor Mariotti at the Oriental Art Museum of Venice. It is a pity that we cannot meet in person in Venice this time today, but I look forward to going back again to Venice and the Foscari University in the near future, wishing that this pandemic crisis will be overcome soon. Since I took the office as Consul General in Milan, the interest in Japanese cuisine and food in general has had a significant increase, driven by the success of Expo Milano 2015. Subsequently, in fact, the number of Japanese restaurants has increased considerably, not only in Milan, but also throughout Italy. More people nowadays are discovering the authentic Japanese cuisine, also thanks to the growing number of Italian tourists visiting Japan, which has reached the highest number of 160,000 people in 2019. Although these positive trends have sadly been forced to stagnate due to the coronavirus pandemic. If we look at the recent relationship between Japan and Italy, it has developed very steadily with commercial expansion, such as the conclusion of the Japan-EU EPA Economic Partnership Agreement in 2019. After its entry into force, in fact, trade between the two countries has increased in 2019. As we can see, the Italian export to Japan increased by 19% compared to the previous year, and imports from Japan by 9%. Specifically, the increase of imports from Japan in the agri-food sector was equal to 11%, and that in the beverage sector was equal to 6%. The extent of imports from Japan in both sectors is still very limited if we compare it with that of Italian exports to Japan. The ratio is 1 to 65. It follows that there is more room to be exploited to increase Japanese exports into Italy. I believe that the original agro-food of Japan will help you find or redouble pleasure of eating Japanese cuisine. On the recommendation of the Consulate General of Japan, the Japanese chef Haruo Ichikawa, who worked as the chef at the Japanese restaurant Iyo in Milan and inaugurated in September 2019 his own restaurant Ichikawa, was appointed Japanese cuisine goodwill ambassador in Italy, and just yesterday, I was able to personally deliver him the certificate. The consulate also organized online events on Japanese street with the participation of the consulate's chef, or on Japanese tea by the Japanese tea ambassador in Italy, with the hope of letting to enjoy the good taste of Japanese cuisine, even if only visually. Even Mrs. Stefania Vitti, one of the speakers of this symposium, fascinated the participant with her story on Japanese street food. When the pandemic crisis finally ceases and activities can be resumed in the presence, the consulate will activate itself in collaboration with the Japanese community present in the northern Italy, starting with the Chef Ichikawa, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce in Italy, and the Jetro Milan to promote initiatives aimed at making known the variety and charm of Japanese cuisine. As you know, on 11th March last week, 10 years have passed since the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011. Today, there are still people living displaced, uprooted from their homeland, and there are still issues to be addressed in order to complete the reconstruction. However, thanks to the support received from around the world, the region affected by the earthquake have made great strides, and the tie between them and the world is becoming stronger and stronger. I would like to express sincere gratitude for the great support that the Foscari University delivered to Fukushima at the time by organizing many events of solidarity involving entire local community. Now let me touch upon the issue of the export of Japanese agri-food product. The Japanese government has set the goal of reaching 5 trillion yen, about 41 billion euros, for the export of agri-food products from Japan. the percentage of export on the domestic consumption production of